Calvin Castine at Northeastern Clinton Central School. It's the 10th day of May 2016, and I was here last night for softball, and I mentioned that 50 years ago I started at a place called Sheridan Iron Works. And I think your father worked there, didn't he? I know your uncle did, Alton Garrand.
He did.
Harris Graphics. And,
He did.
Yeah, I'm here with Robb Garrand, a school superintendent, brand new school superintendent. And Jennifer Brown, and your official title, Jennifer, is?
Business manager.
Business manager,
Yeah.
okay. We're here because on May 17th, all around the state, people will be voting on their school budgets. And that's from 11 till 8, is it, here at
Yes.
Northeastern?
That is correct.
And the locations are here at the middle school and the cafeteria, old cafeteria, what's that called?
It is for Champlain Rouse's Point residents in the small cafeteria
Mhm.
across from the district office, and for the residents of Moores, it'll be at the Moores Elementary School.
Okay. Robb, as I mentioned this to you before we put the camera on, the first question people are going to want to know is, who's going to be coaching the varsity basketball team next year?
At the present time, I am planning on continuing as the coach of the boys varsity basketball team.
Okay, so successful Section 7 title under your belt this year, so you're going to put your name in, and the board will either approve it or just like every
Great
other
season,
coach?
great season, and the board has been very, very supportive of my future endeavors to remain coaching in the basketball program.
All right, so I'm sure a lot of Cougar sports fans will be happy to hear that. What year did you? 92, I'm guessing. Graduate of Northeastern.
92.
92. And you're you older than Rick, your brother?
I am 4 years younger than
4
my
years
brother.
younger. Okay, I remember.
I make sure I say that very.
Just that I seem to remember Rick's hockey career,
Mhm.
so I started taping in '83 and started calling it Hometown Cable in '86. So he must have been in high school at St. John's at the time.
Very successful St. John's hockey program.
Yeah, he was a state champion, I think.
I
at-
believe
at
twice.
goalie, yeah. So he went to St. John's, you went to Northeastern, but you ended up teaching at St. Mary's.
I began my career at age 21 at St. Mary's as a 5th grade teacher.
Yeah, and look at you now.
A lot of experiences.
At what point in time did you say, I'm going to be superintendent of that school someday?
Actually, I have 9 years teaching experience. I taught grades 1st, 4th, 5th, and 6th. Majority of that tenure as a 6th grade teacher. And I was approached by administration about going in the pathway to become an administrator. At that point, I had no interest. Then after being asked a few more times, I decided to, hey, the heck with it. I got my master's in curriculum instruction, and then I decided to, thank goodness, take my electives in administration. And then I completed my pathway through MCLA, which is in Massachusetts. And I completed my certificate in May and was hired as the new assistant principal 10 years ago in June. So there's within a month. And then the year after, I was interviewed and hired as principal of Rouse's Point Elementary School, where I was there for 9 years. I anticipated serving somewhere in New York State, my ultimate career path goal, to serve as a superintendent of schools my last 6 or 7 years. Needless to say, I have a lot more than 6 or 7 years.
Let's hope so.
And I was approached by the district, and sometimes things happen for a reason, the unexpected, but I couldn't be happier to serve residents of our community, and definitely as being a product of the school system.
Okay, so you became interim
In August.
In August, you became interim superintendent, and within the last month or two, you.
As of April 7th, I agreed to accept the position of superintendent of schools.
Okay. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And you're the first graduate of this school to ever hold that position. Bob Hebert was a local boy who grew up just down the road here, but he went off to become a priest. So he didn't end up graduating from here. He went to a seminary. And
I didn't even know that.
Yes. So
Wow.
obviously he didn't become a priest. But
Didn't
so,
know that.
Yeah. Of course, he was also known as Hebert, but
Mhm.
in his younger day. But his father was Frank Hebert, and he was Robert Hebert. Gotta give you equal time, Jennifer.
That's okay.
No, you don't want to give time?
No, I'm good.
You're good? We won't get too personal. Okay, you guys are here to talk about the budget. I gotta ask, first of all, everybody got, I'll try to hold it up so the camera can see it. This was addressed to resident, and I'm a resident, so I got one of these. How do we determine who P.O. box holders are residents and are not? Does the post office have a way to do that? Do we know?
Yeah, they have, we call the post office and they tell us how many rural routes they have and how many boxes they have, and we produce the budgets based on the numbers that they give us, and then they distribute them.
So every P.O. box got one?
Mhm.
So we get a lot of Canadians and out-of-towners
Yep.
that got these, but there's just no way to determine when you get a P.O.
Right,
box
right.
who's local and who's not, so. Okay, so if you don't have a P.O. box and you're not a resident, you didn't get one of these. We do have some people with Shazy addresses.
Yes.
Did they get
West
one?
Shazy, yep. We have a list of 309 labels that we print that are West Shazy, Altona, other.
Shazy, there must be some with Shazy, I would think.
Yeah,
Maybe
probably
we
a
do have
couple
some
in Shazy,
Shazy.
West Shazy, and there
Correct.
are 4 other towns that we actually print labels for, and that's how those residents get them.
Okay. All right. So I'll sit back and try to be quiet, which isn't always easy for me, but I'll let you talk about the budget, and I know, Rob, you want to talk about programs and so on, right? So go ahead.
You want to go with a similar format as
Mhm.
the PowerPoint? Okay. We'll go in a similar format that we did the PowerPoint presentation that we did for our board meetings. Our tax cap this year, our tax cap calculation gave us a 2.71 tax increase that we're allowed to raise this year. The board decided to only use the 1.71 of that tax cap calculation, which will produce $178,097 in additional revenue this year for the district.
Can I interrupt? That's
Yes,
fine.
absolutely.
Okay, tax cap. That's a number that the state comes up with.
Yep.
And I'm sure it's all done very scientifically, not just pulled out of the air,
No.
as some people might speculate, but.
Nope.
A
There's
wonderful formula to
There's
follow.
a online calculation where you punch in your district specific data and it gives you a number.
So our number was
2.71.
2.71, we came in a whole percentage point
Correct.
underneath that, so,
Yep.
okay. So I just want to point out that last year, I'll try my hardest not to interrupt you, but
No,
last
it's
year, the budget failed twice. Because if you went over that 2.71, which we're not doing, you would have to get 60% of the vote.
Right.
Last year, both times it came up, it got over 50, but it didn't reach that 60%.
And last year our calculation was actually a negative 2%. So anything over a negative 2% was 60%. So even at a 0
Yeah.
was a 60%. So each year your calculation is different, and that's what determines when you need a 60% majority or not.
How far ahead do they tell you? What's your percent?
We have to calculate it for February 1st. So February, March, April, you know what your calculation is, but not much before that.
Okay.
You can estimate, but you never really know.
Yeah, so the state comes up with that magic number.
Right.
Okay, so we're under the tax cap this year.
Yes. Which means we only need 50% of the voter approval this year rather than the supermajority that was required last year. And the 1% that we're not going out for this year, the difference between the 271 and the 171, we are actually able to, I don't think it's a technical term, but bank that 1% for future years. So if we ever have a negative tax cap in the future, you're allowed to take those dollars and put it back into your calculation in a reserve, and then you can increase your tax rate in that year, even though, say, your calculation is 0.5% and you want 1.5, you have that 1% that we didn't use this year that we'll be able to use in future budgets if needed.
Okay, well, just to use as an example, I'll use a nice number of $100.
Mhm.
If you had a $100 budget and this year they allowed you to go to 102 and you only went to 101,
Yeah.
well, next year your starting off point could be the 102 rather than the 101.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay?
That's about the our Revenue this year increased 4.1%, which in dollars is just over 1.1 million. The majority of that is made up in the restoration of the GEA, which was the money that the state has been holding since 2009 2010 to fill their tax gap. So we were reinstated with $504,000, which was our own money. So they've reinstated all of that. So that's a significant share of our $875,000 increase in state aid.
Okay. GAP, which is apparently is an acronym for something, and GEA is Gap Elimination Adjustment.
Yes.
Do you know what GAP is off the top of your head? GAP? If not,
I've always used the GEA, which was the gap elimination
Yeah.
adjustment.
Yeah.
I think the gap was just the hole that was being filled with the GEA money. I think that's where the gap.
And this again is, you don't have to agree with this, but this is money that apparently arbitrarily the state decides that they're going to hang on to, and this time they released it. So
Correct.
Which people often forget that was our money to begin with.
right,
Right.
yeah,
And I
Yeah.
believe over the period of time, it was close to 11 million.
Yes,
that
it was
they've
just
held
shy
on
of
to
11
our
million
money.
that we've lost in 5 years.
so this $504,930 is not all of it? Is
Nope,
more?
that was the remaining
Correct.
amount of
I
it.
was left. Okay, so
They our first initial run was 204,000
Mhm.
with a remaining 272,000, and then he went for full supported full
Restoration.
restoration, provided all funds back to the district for a total of 504,000.
okay. So whatever that magic gap is and GEA is,
It's gone away.
It's ours now.
That's right. So with the restoration of the GA, which was $500,000, there was an additional about $375,000 that came in regular state increases, foundation aid, BOCES aid, transportation aid, building aid, those aids. The other increase was the $178,000, which will be from the 1.71% tax increase. That makes up the majority of the 1.1 million increase for this year's budget. If you have any revenues.
Nope.
If we use that 1.71 and estimated what our tax rate per thousand will be next year, the only number that we have to use in the calculation is what the amount we're asking for with the 1.71 tax levy increase, and using last year's assessment amount, it would calculate into an increase of 34 cents per thousand. And so on an average homeowner with a $100,000 assessment, if you subtract $30,000, which is payable through STAR, that comes up with a $70,000 taxable amount. So that would be an overall increase to a taxpayer with a $100,000 home assessment of $23.80.
Okay. Now, apparently our assessments have gone up a little bit
Right.
because I did the math on the tax rate and the amount we're raising by taxes. The increase, as you said, is 1.71, and the increase in the tax rate per thousand is actually a little under 1.7. So apparently the assessments went up, so your individual amount will go up just a little bit less than that 1.71, unless your assessment went up.
Right, your personal, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
As far as to an area, it was very, very important through our budget season that we do some cost comparisons with other school districts. And we took all of our Clinton County and some Essex County schools, and just letting people know where we are at with our budget. For example, our projected 2016-2017 budget of 28 million, shy of 600,000, is a cost per student of our enrollment of 1,305 students of $21,898. We are actually the lowest cost per pupil that we, as far as expenditures from our area schools, of our budget of what we spend per student.
Okay.
And then,
with a high of 27, I don't know if we want to mention the school district, but
Correct.
a high of 27, we're just under 22. No, the average, we're at 21.
Correct.
What's this bottom line?
This is our 2016
Oh,
proposed
projected.
budget. So this is where the proposed budgets of our area
okay.
school districts from last
Last
year.
year.
Here is our 2016-17 in
Oh,
comparison.
okay, yeah, obviously you can't
Right.
Correct.
go with this year's because they haven't
Correct.
got it, so.
Right.
So it just continues to show that we have been very fiscally responsible as well as, but I mean, there's a need that I'll talk about later, that there's some programming that we have lost that we'll be looking at for restoration for our students. Here again is a budget history.
Is there another one of these?
Mm.
I'm gonna keep, that's all right. No.
Here's another of a budget history, and you'll see that we are going out for 2016-17 basically with the same operational costs of what we're out for 2011-2012. During these periods, very bleak 4 years of elimination, we lost some very key instructors. Matter of fact, in the high school, we lost a core math, social, science, and English teacher. We've lost electives for our students. Provide math interventionists and reading interventionists for elementary levels, as well as an administrative position. So, bringing back this year some of those needed positions for our students.
Yeah, so what Rob is saying here is, this budget is almost exactly the budget from 5 years ago, total-wise.
Correct.
So we've decreased, and now we're, so you're spending what you did 5 years ago, which
Mhm.
is, not too many people are doing that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because you have the increased costs and contractual obligations, health
Right.
insurance, TRS, ERS, all of those things continue to go up, so you have to reduce positions and programs to make up for those costs that you can't control.
Okay, well, let's talk, do we know
Sure.
student enrollment? Public school enrollment shows here from, last year was 1305, this year projected to be 1310. Does that
Correct.
sound right?
We are maintaining our enrollment. A lot of districts are going down. We are maintaining our enrollment. Our projected enrollment does anticipate a very slight increase. But I must say that there's a lot of transient families moving into our areas daily. It's not uncommon for us to enroll 3 to 4 students in a given day.
Okay, we'll continue that conversation off camera.
Correct.
We'll go through each part of the budget and try to address where a majority of the increases are. The first section would be the general support section, which includes operations and maintenance, the district office, the business office, payroll. The majority of the increase comes because on a contingent budget this year, we are not allowed to buy any equipment purchases. And over the last 5 to 7 years of all these reductions, we have been able to purchase very little as far as classroom furniture, maintenance equipment, anything basically anything in an equipment code. So besides contractual salary obligations, we have a new expense. We have to do county voting. We can no longer use our voting machines. We have to pay the county to come do our elections. We restored a lot of our equipment codes back to previous levels, and we're plan on purchasing a truck, a tractor, and get back into the cycle of replacing one classroom per building. And as far as furniture-wise, the furniture hasn't been replaced in any classroom other than 1 year with grant funds. We replaced one classroom in each building. So we want to get back into that cycle of replacement of classroom furniture before everything becomes outdated and we have a furniture crisis. And the only other thing in that other general area that increased significantly was the BOCES administrative and capital costs. That amount we can't control. That's BOCES budget. They determine their budget, and then they pass that expense on to the districts based on enrollment per district.
Now, occupational education under instruction, is it? That's not under general support, I guess, but under instruction, I see that's actually down. Is that?
That's CV Tech.
That's CV Tech,
Yeah.
which is, you can say BOCES, but I understand BOCES is the operating
Correct.
Mhm.
entity, and CV Tech is the teaching entity of the
Right.
BOCES program.
Yep.
So when we get into instructions, we can talk
Yep.
about that, but, okay. Go ahead.
Actually, the next part is the instruction piece, if you want to.
So we would be looking at restoring some full-time positions in regular education and supporting a special education position and administrative position. In the 2015-2016 budget season, 2 math AIS providers were eliminated from each of the elementary campuses. So one from Ross's Point, one from Moores. So presently we have students in K-5 that classroom teachers have picked up the service, but ideally have lost a lot of support, especially to our area, comparison to our area schools that have a body that's going in helping to support classroom instruction as well as pulling out students to provide supplemental instruction as well. So we are looking at restoring a math interventionist into each of the elementary school settings. We have 41 students in one location and 43 students in another location that are shown as far as their benchmark assessments below grade level, which again continues to show the need for this additional support. The Math AIS provider also has an opportunity to align curriculum, working with all of the grade level teachers, helping to support instruction, but also to realize where the K through 5 curricular pathway is going. Common planning time is provided in our elementary school, so from 2:30 to 3 o'clock each day, the Math AIS provider would work with classroom teachers to help not only support the classroom instruction, but to really have some very positive student support team meetings where they can work on student deficiencies and carry out an action plan to help students get back on target. We also have in the budget for 2 reading specialists. Presently we have in the middle school and the high school, we serve slightly over 700 students, and there is not one literacy coach to support these students. And we know that our best money can go into early intervention with pre-K, especially the pre-K through grade 3, which we have an early language model, which is very, very strong support. We have a classroom teacher, a special education teacher, and a reading specialist, and speech language pathologists that work closely with our students daily. But the part that we need to remember is we do have those students 6 through 12 that can fall through the gaps. For example, we can have a 10th grade student enrolled in 10th grade but may have a 5th grade reading level. And a lot of those coping strategies have been exhausted at that point, and then we turn to frustration, become behavioral challenges. And as a district, we definitely have a vision not to watch a student drop out of school because they're not getting the support they need. So we're looking at restoring for the middle school and high school a reading specialist. We had a position eliminated in 2014-2015, an additional position eliminated 2015-2016. So we're really looking at these 4 positions, 2 in the math interventionists in the elementary schools and the reading interventionists in the middle high school. If we want to provide less documentation for classified students with IEPs, special needs students, we need to provide more support for our regular education programs, hopefully to defer in an area and having students that do not have to go that route of classification.
Now, how difficult is it for modern day teachers with all the mandates being put on by state and feds to concentrate on your 3 R's? Reading, writing, arithmetic is really
Correct.
what you need. I like local history, but you don't need local history to get out there and earn a living, but you need to be able to comprehend when you read something. You need to be able to put 2 and 2 together, and I'm sure you've all had horror stories of coming back to you and talking about recent graduates where you get to a clerk and it comes to 78 cents, so you give them $1.03 and they can't figure out if you want a quarterback. They don't understand that. How difficult is it for the staff to concentrate on the
Time management is one of the biggest challenges now for an educator because there are so many hours in the day, and then you often have students that, for example, are struggling learners that leave the classroom 2 or 3 different times, whether it's OT, PT, speech language, and then you're already doing a lot of catching up. And the expectations, through the Common Core, they have a curriculum that they must cover, and regardless, social science is in that pathway of curriculum in order to have students ready for the next grade level to meet that alignment. But a concern also for the middle high school is, for example, if you have a math teacher who's teaching their classroom periods of their 40 minutes of instruction, and then you go to social science, it's more content specific, and you're not as much of a literacy coach, and a lot of your Middle high school teachers are specialists in their content area, but not specialists in teaching literacy. And we know whether student decoding or comprehension, as we know, reading affects all areas and all content. And we do have some of those high school students that I meet with some on a daily basis that, schooling, they're looking at alternative plans, because when they're middle high school, there's ways that they're looking at coping to not show the class their deficits or so on. When it comes to high school, a lot of those students do become more and more behavioral challenges, and just the school pathway becomes the frustration. And I've seen the reading specialists that have saved kids to graduation. That it's something they can connect with, and that 40 minutes of instruction a day is critical when it does amount to 200 minutes for the week. One of the areas we're looking at elementary school, our students test well, but inferential thinking is an area that was something that's not right in front of you. You're making inferences, we really want to not just say a K through 5 reading team. We want to see a K-12 continuity as far as that, because when the day is done, it's very, very difficult to watch a student drop out of school, because we know what that means for the future, but they're thinking about the present. And I just really believe that additional reading support will save some students.
Yeah, and again, I'm not offering this as for you to agree or disagree, but I think of this when I hear the governor talking about $15 minimum wage, how huge that sounds to a 14, 15-year-old, and says,
correct,
I can just quit here when I'm 16 and go out and make all that money. I don't need to get this education.
That's unfortunately the discussions I have with some of our young people, because in their mindset, $15 an hour is they believe they're going to be set for life. But preparing them 30 years from now with $15 an hour is going to be, as we know, it can increase again. But really, really talking about goals, and oftentimes making short, measurable, smart goals instead of what your life's going to be 20 years from now, and then you realize 5 years, 10 years, you're not working your pathway, and then it sets into more frustration. Right. But to get them to understand that $15 an hour right now and choosing the workforce is not necessarily going to be your life plan as you get older. And I continue sharing also, the jobs created 10 years from now are still unheard of. People that we don't even know what they're going to be.
Right.
So you're really, really having those conversations with students, and a lot of students, as of right now, again, what's in their wallet to put in for, but it's very, very important. But it's the education that's going to build upon their success and foundation. And a lot of times, let's face it, a lot of the students that feel that way are your struggling learners.
Right.
And they're looking for that person.
The cop-out.
Correct.
Yeah.
And for me, it's we can have whatever vision we want as a district. First and foremost, you have to have that area of curriculum centered, but if we're not student centered first, and making sure that student that's struggling, that you still have to listen to, the student that wants to not necessarily that schooling is not for them anymore and chooses to quit, you still have to listen to, and you have to provide the best frameworks to really kind of guide them. But a lot of it goes down to taking out paper and pencil, because a lot of times students, even with your career pathways, are not truly believing or thinking about what their future is ahead of them, and often living with, what am I doing now? Is that helping or hurting the situation for my future? It's very, very it's much easier to live for the present as a high school student as it is somebody, what they want to be as they get older. And quite often the part that the conversation, the direction I take is, for example, I often hear students that wishing schooling is not for them, like to go into farming, and still communicating to them that you still need your language skills. Farming continues to change, and the technology and advancements in farming, and you still need to be able to communicate with the people and develop partnerships, and still doing your math lessons and so on. All of your schooling still comes into being the best successful farmer. You're going to be having to research best practices. You break it down for them, and it helps them best understand. But these are students that you don't just meet with once a week. They have to be on your radar all the time. And most importantly, the biggest benefit of it is they still have another positive connection in school. Ms. Brown can share with you that's one thing I've worked really hard, that my door is open. When there's meetings, it's one thing, it's closed, my door is open, that you want those open conversations. If it can save somebody for making sure that they can take pride in what Northeastern Clinton has provided them for a foundation. It's worth the doors being open.
And you've got 2 doors.
We have 2 doors.
Right.
2
Two
doors.
doors.
Another position is a special education teacher, which is a .6 position. We have students that are classified that need additional resource room support. So that's an area of the budget that has to happen because that's on their IEP, and we have to meet the students' IEPs.
Okay, but getting back to my CV Tech
Mhm.
concern here was that it looks like occupational education, I'm assuming that's CV Tech,
Mhm.
that's going down. I'm kind of surprised at that. I would think that, more and more kids need
Correct.
to learn a skill
Correct.
that they're not necessarily gonna learn here in a
Correct.
regular school, so.
And that number, Calvin, fluctuates depending on student enrollment and
Exactly.
what they choose. That's why that number will never be. Basically you're taking preliminary numbers of who is planning on going. One of the things we'd like to do at some point too is, we presented to the board kind of like a 5-year plan for spending instead of every year going, oh, this is what we need, this is what we need, and kind of
Yeah.
like a Band-Aid approach. That even though we can change the menu around, an area we have to look at very carefully is bringing some more electives back. For example, CV Tech, outstanding program. But to increase our technology services and things and electives that we have here
Mhm.
as well. But we have a very close relationship, and we definitely support the CV Tech program as well. But that's definitely based on student enrollment. And sometimes you may not lose the popularity for CV Tech. It may just be that a future junior senior class, you may have a 9th, 10th grade with a higher population than your junior senior class, or the class that's exiting as seniors may be an incoming senior class that's less
Uh-huh.
students. And that brings us to our last position, that the assistant principalship. And the assistant principalship works towards continuing to improve the culture of our school. Safety and security upgrades. One of the areas we've worked hard this year to do is make sure that we have better teaming with our administrative staff, meaning if a student has discussions with a principal, that their counselor's there present as well. I've been highly involved in that to really have documentation that we meet with students, whether it's a once-a-week track or a bi-weekly track, and we're doing documentation about conversations, action plans. The assistant principal also serves with curriculum and teacher evaluation. My very first position was assistant principal. I know what it was like to be called when you're working on a task in the high school. Next thing you know, you're called to the middle school. It is a much needed position, and I've also provided evidence to the school board. We've had this position since 2000. It was eliminated last year, and I definitely know the need for it. We also have, throughout our surrounding communities, a lot more mental health types of situations, and that's one of the areas we have a lack of mental health support for our community families and students. And this is an area to help us even get a better grasp. Anybody that's involved with daily operations of school, you can take a school issue that comes in. It could come in from home, it could be at school, but an administrator could be on a task all day long while you have a lineup of 10 that need you.
With one student.
Correct.
And if you're bringing in, you said, there were sometimes 2
Correct.
people there, so you got
Correct.
2
Correct.
of your staff
Mhm.
working on this
Yes.
one kid or one child.
And the other area often what people forget about, Calvin, is we have 2 counselors that serve our entire high school population. But it's not just for social emotional needs. They also have that getting students college and career ready.
Right.
So they have another job as far as in the area of supporting students. But what I've also done to provide the board, to me, a solid recommendation to restore this position was, we are the only school around our size that is operating right now without an assistant principal and or dean of discipline. The only school. I've stepped highly into that role. I will continue being visible and proactive in being into that role. But there are some very tough days of students need more than what we can offer. And I look at that as an assistant principal of, it can be very creative with the assistant principal working with the middle school as well as the high school principal and counseling staff, because let's face it, some students work better with others. And kind of having where a student can go to anybody, but you kind of have your own caseload. A student, even as myself, a superintendent, may work better with a high school principal than they do myself. But how do we develop that true teaming? As you know, with the world of school violence, safety security is also, the assistant principal has always been a facilitator of that function. What I want people to know is going back talking about these are all restorations in the last 2 years. We haven't even gotten to restorations of 4 or 5 years, because what's key is we can't bring back all the positions to increase programming that our students need to not be able to sustain them. We're not interested in going back to the drawing board 2 or 3 years and saying we now have to cut everybody all over again.
Yeah.
We're bringing back to we feel as menu item number 1, to really help our struggling learners and continue moving our culture of the school. One of the things in the newsletter you'll notice we've been recognized as the Ray Holmes Sportsmanship Award. I think that's pretty classy. I often hear from officials, and even you take our students on field trips, people talking about the great students that Northeastern Clinton has. And I give echo to the fine school system as well as the families working closely with the school system. But that doesn't mean that it's great. It means we take things away. It's there because we have support in place for our students. What we developed this year was a K-12 grant team, which I'll try not to talk too long about. I'm very excited about that. I started that initiative in October. And let's face it, in a school our size, you can get lost within your own Ross's Point, worrying about Ross's Point, Moore's worrying about Moore's, and we're really good at having a vision as a district. But one of the areas I looked at is we must go to taxpayers and say that we are looking for alternative ways to bring revenue into our district instead of solely relying on taxpayers. So we organized a grant team, and working with Brittany Tribendis through Project Thrive, we applied for an extended day grant as well as a school violence grant. That would support 3 of the interventionist positions to provide additional support, as well as the assistant principal, should we get that grant. Although we're supposed to know in March, and here we are in May. No news is good news, I guess. But I'm looking at it as the benefits. We have a K-12 team talking, and middle school, high school, really worried about the key intervention. Elementary, understanding more of the middle, high school. If anything, it's had quality conversations that we are delivering as a district. It's been great data collection, and we need data to inform our instruction, where we're going. It's been a great baseline because we are not stopping. We are applying for other grants. We're looking at preschool education right now. Right now, presently, we have a grant that funds the teacher in addition to an aide, but we out of the general budget have to support the other teacher and aide. We're looking at how do we cover that other area. It's very, very important to me, being a taxpayer myself, that we maintain fiscal responsibility and that we're just not giving budget items that we rely, again, that our taxpayers are saying, this is what we need. I love to exhaust the list saying this is what we're looking out. And again, if we do not receive the funds, that would be $500,000 each year for 5 years.
Wow.
If not, again, we have good framework to apply for future grants, as we will each year. A teacher from the committee received this $1,750 grant to help with upgrading our security. So if anything, we have a great framework now people are thinking about, and it's very much of the world of sports. We want to create that competitive type of spirit and edge to go after. Money's there, and we need to go after the money. And again, at least if anything doesn't happen here, we have a great team, and we will apply, and we're going to only learn from it. But we have a great narrative that we applied for, a great budget. Is it more work? Absolutely. But when it comes to bringing additional programs for our students, it's definitely worth that work. We also have we've been awarded $1.4 million from the Smart Bond grant. We're not the only school. And basically our area, though, a good majority of that money is updating our infrastructure. To make sure that you don't want to go out right now and have all this installment purchase plan, and then next thing you know, all of our technology 3 or 4 years from now, as it's changing, is all obsolete because we don't have appropriate wiring and so on. So that's our goal, and then we'll have an installment plan into our budget, because our ultimate goal within 2-3 years is to have devices in the hands of our students. As we know, the technology daily is changing around us. So there are definitely some exciting things happening at Northeastern Clinton, and that we're proud to announce. But we really believe, administrative-wise, that we have presented a very solid budget, while thinking first and foremost of our students to what their needs are, but also understanding that there are taxpayers that are on fixed budgets as well. If you want to talk about transportation.
Last couple departments, transportation, there's minimal increase. The only really thing that you'll see there is, again, restoring some of the equipment codes to previous levels to start maintaining some of the repairs and upgrades to the building that we've had to put off for 5 to 6 years. And also you'll see a proposition on the budget for the purchase of 4 new buses.
Now, Transportation, I assume that every gallon of gas or diesel fuel, whatever they burn, is included in
Correct.
that budget.
Yes.
What happens like a year like this where the gas prices are low? Do we have a carryover fund that, you know, we didn't spend it all, hopefully, because
Right.
gas prices were down,
Yep.
so we got more
Yep.
money in that gas money budget?
Yep. That becomes your end-all budget. It doesn't remain in transportation for transportation's budget the following year. It goes into our overall fund balance, which we carry over into the next year for budget building purposes. So there is a pool of money at the end. If you have excess revenue, that's also put into this carryover number, which creates your fund balance. But it does roll over to the next year where you're able to use it for future budgets.
Okay.
The last
If I can just add
area.
something about transportation, which oftentimes people don't think, you know, they think when they see it, 4 new buses, here we are, well, we're trying to always be on a rotation plan of our fleet instead of exhausting all the money repairing. And that's also 90% aidable.
Yeah, yeah. You know roughly how many buses we have on the road in a regular, if you don't worry about it, but, you know, so, I don't know if 4 is 10% of them, or
I'd say it's approaching 50, I believe.
I was going to
50
say about
buses?
40, so I'd say between 40 and 50.
so 4 is,
Right.
Correct.
Right.
that's every 10 years, you're gonna buy 40 buses.
Correct.
And if you got 40 on the road, that, you're gonna have some
Exactly.
10-year-old buses
This is
out
not
there.
Yes.
And they put on a lot of miles.
And we
They do.
cover a large area.
Yeah. Okay.
The last area is just the benefits debt service area. That's an increase of 4%. One of the areas that we did increase was the $100,000 project that we've done historically every year. We had to take it out in 15-16 because we were on a contingent budget, so we were unable to do that annual project. That's aided in the future years, so you spend $100,000, you get a significant portion of that back the following year. So if you stay in a rotation, you're always funding that $100,000 project, which helps to alleviate the need for bigger projects and going out with a bond proposal. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that this year, but we did add it back into next year's budget, hoping to get back into that rotation. Other increases in the area are just basic TRS, ERS, Social Security, Workman Comp, health insurance numbers.
So basically, we're in the process of postcards being mailed to budget residents, as far as the residents of our community, reminding them about May 17th, the budget vote.
Doing this on the 10th, so they better be
Yeah.
in the mail pretty soon.
And there's 7 days. They go out tomorrow. They have to be 7 days before the vote.
So again, we have our budget vote May 17th, and the propositions, so obviously the community members will be voting on the 2016-2017 budget, the bus proposition, the library proposition, which is some monies that we provide to support our community libraries, and the board member term proposition. We are looking at a vote that would, 5 years can be long. It could sometimes have members of our community possibly not as interested in serving a 5-year term, so we're looking at a vote to bring the term down to 4 years. And presently, we have Stephen Southwick, who's presently on the board, who will be seeking re-election.
Okay.
We have 2 other seats on the board, and that will be done by write-in.
Because
we did not receive other petitions.
So
And I was-
Steve is unopposed.
Correct.
But you could still write in and oppose him if you want.
Correct. And the other area, interesting enough, Calvin, is because this was kind of new to me, and so I was at a chief school officer meeting last week, and we are not the only school that has. So that seems to be a new area of
Or people aren't
concern
fighting to
as
get on the
well.
school board.
Correct.
Yeah.
We do have Ann LeDuc, who had to resign due to personal issues.
Uh-huh.
She is going to be also seeking a write-in. She has made it known that she would continue, and because we had to check into it because she is not allowed to rescind, to check in with our school
resignation, okay.
attorney. So, and then that would, obviously, regardless, it leaves for 2 write-in potential candidates.
Okay, so who else the other term that, who's the other spot that's currently held by
Lynn Grovine.
Lynn Globine? Okay, so Lynn's not running again,
I
obviously.
believe so.
Well,
Unless she becomes a write-in.
Write-in, yeah. So, there'll only be one name on that ballot, but there'll be place for
Correct.
write-ins on
Correct.
particularly on the other two.
Yes.
Now, Steve is a 5-year term? Or
Correct.
are the
Steve will
others-
be a 5-year, and the 2 write-ins will be a 3-year term and a 1-year term.
Okay. So, if people are looking for one of those terms, they better specify to the people they're trying to get to write in their name which one they want.
Mhm.
Because I could see a situation where Ann could be elected to the 3-year and the 2-year, and the 1-year.
Right. I believe it's done by the number of
It'll be the
highest
number of
votes. So whoever.
Unless they tie, then we have
And
another
then-
problem.
Right.
Okay, so there's not necessarily a 3 and a 1. It's the
Right.
highest number of
Number
votes gets the
gets
3,
three
and
and
the second number, highest
Correct.
number of votes
Gets
Yes.
the
gets
one.
the 1. Okay.
Yep.
I was actually told by a.
But you can vote for 2 people.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was told by a nearby school from the superintendent that 4 years ago they had a write-in situation, and that 12 candidates all had 1 vote. So they had to call all 12 and ask if they were interested, and it ended up being 4, and then they had to go to an election for the 4. Also, another area of, I guess, a recommendation for community is to make sure that they do not do nicknames or it won't be valid. It has to be the legal name of the candidate. Because we're also informed from another school district that a candidate had a nickname, and
Uh-huh.
the nicknames were all voided because it wasn't a legal name.
No, like my brother Sam, his real name is Clarence.
Mhm.
His middle name isn't Sam, it's just
Mhm.
Wouldn't
father
count.
decided to call him Sam. So he became known as Sam Castine. But
And
his-
I wouldn't have known that either, and I just saw him at Drex Subs this weekend, and I said, "Hi, Sam."
But my mother always called him Clarence.
Especially if he was in trouble, right?
Okay, so I wanted to get that in there. I should point that I wanted to point this out because in addition to being a resident and not getting a personal thing, Shazy does send me a personal one here, so I just wanted to run that. But in Shazy's, they broke down a little pie chart thing, in the revenues and the state aid. Shazy's a small district, and it seems like the smaller the district, the less the state wants you to exist. That's an observation on my part. Shazy's federal and state portion of the budget is 48%. Ours at Northeastern is 59%. Property tax is 43% for Shazy. Ours is just 37%. So theirs is 5 percentage points difference between the state federal aid and what they have to raise by federal taxes, state tax, property taxes. Ours is an 18% difference between state and federal aid and property tax. So our budget could look far worse if we were in that same
Mhm.
percentage point as the folks in Shazy are.
And your personal thought is accurate, because that's already been discussed in the past, in the previous few years, should say 2-3 years, that the ultimate goal is some of your smaller schools to consolidate.
You've seen that pressure putting on in Elizabethtown
Correct.
and
A lot of shared
Westport
services.
right now.
Yes.
And I think the state would be quite happy if BOCES was the school district.
Yes.
If we had one
Yes.
school district
Mhm.
in this area that we now call All Sable Valley and
Correct.
Yep.
Plattsburgh High School, and Saranac, and
Mhm.
Northeastern and Northern Adirondack. If
Yep.
there was one school district, the state would be a lot happier, I think.
Mhm.
Of course, that's how Northeastern came to be because of mergers 45 years ago. Doesn't seem that long ago, does it, Rob?
I wasn't born yet, so.
Okay, anything else, folks, that I should talk about that we haven't covered here? Anything that you're glad I didn't bring up that you want to bring up here? Let's make believe the camera's off. Say, boy, I'm glad you didn't ask me.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. So again, Tuesday, May 17th. No matter where you are, if you're watching this in New York State, your school's having a budget vote. Here at Northeastern, it's from 11 till 8. Here at the middle school, if you live in Champlain, Rouse's Point, and if they're in the Moores, how do you determine who's in the Moores district? Is it town lines, or how does that determine? you know?
My understanding is that it's exactly that, your boundary lines of your town.
So,
And if anybody has a question, they can call the district clerk and they'll be able to tell you which
yeah,
voting area you're in.
yeah, because there's bound to be a few new voters
Correct.
that haven't voted in the past. That,
Yeah.
but I would assume the Scioto folks vote in Moores, because
Mhm.
that was probably be the Moores district, and the West Shazy address would probably, but I assume that. But
I would agree.
yeah.
You know, another area I'll be looking at, if the budget passes, is I'm a firm believer that this school is the center of a community, and the outside, an only effective school brings the outside in. So I'm hoping in the near future to be looking for community members that are also possibly interested in using our school for functions. Because I really, especially when it comes to health and wellness activities, other areas that we can support our families, and to have a true school system operational, that the community that, you know, does pay taxes has also a value and a stakeholder, a stake in our school system.
Well, I think the more times you can get people in those doors,
Correct.
the more they feel that they own the school, and
Mhm.
it's their school, and it's not some thing that they only think about once a year when they go and vote on the budget. And this is,
Correct.
of course, the only budget that we're privileged to vote for is the
Correct.
school budget.
I've also met with the Press Republican and the Sun.
Mhm.
And one area we definitely want to have an avenue going into next year is we have many highlights. I mean, for example, this year is the 50th celebration of our outdoor ed program, Model UN, Science States for robotics. There's so many things that we recognize now in board members of very successful sports teams. I can go on and on and on about the arts and everything else. Is having a school pride team where we have opportunity for more publication of the great things we're doing and achievements at Northeastern Clinton for our community residents to see.
All right, don't forget to include hometown cable in that,
We
because
definitely will.
that's been our goal right along, is to
Mhm.
shine a positive light on what's happening in and around our communities. All right, Jennifer Brown, Robb Garrand, I appreciate you taking an hour of your time to sit down with us. And if people have any questions, what can they do between now and May 17th?
They can call the district office.
All right, call Kim, and
She'll direct you.
Kim will tell you where to.
298-8242.
That's right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.